Heyo everyone, welcome to some patch rundown here. A new patch was just released, 1.0.4. Shoof, can you give me what's the version number?
Let's see. 1.0.4.
1.0.4, and we're gonna look through the stats real quick. Just to give a quick rundown. And we'll play some show matches. We'll answer questions from the chat as well as give our own thoughts. And joining us is Shoof and Valently, as well as
Hello.
AV Ultima.
Hello.
All right, Shoof, what do we got for us here?
All right, so the first big addition is Campfires. So if you've played through about halfway through the campaign, you'll be familiar with these. If not, what they are is they are basically like a mini mill farm combo. You build them, they take 30 seconds to build, and once built, they'll provide you a small area of territory, which you can build structures in and give your units passive out-of-combat healing. And they also give you the same income as a farm, so 1 per second. They last the same amount of time as a farm, so it'll give you 300 food over 5 minutes. They cost 60 food to build, and they will prevent you from entering into starvation if you have one but have no farms, and they have to be killed to knock you out, so you can just have just a campfire and no mills and still be in the game. So they will add a new wrinkle to multiplayer, and it'll shake things up and be quite exciting.
So it's I didn't realize this was actually intended. If you have nothing but a campfire, it'll keep you alive.
Correct.
What if it runs out of food? It won't keep you alive?
You'll go into starvation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, there was just a situation when I was in campaign that I had no farms and
I think
the
they work
campfire burned out.
I think they work slightly differently in the campaign, but that's how.
I think in the campaign they last twice as long.
Yeah, they last 10 minutes in the campaign, I believe.
30 seconds to build. Is that the same as a mill in a farm?
Mills are 20 seconds, farms are 30 seconds, so they're the same time as a farm.
Gotcha. And then after that, they act pretty much the exact same way as a farm. Do you agree with the fact that they're pretty much exactly like a farm?
Well, what is their HP?
I believe it's 50.
Because that's like, just from when I was playing on stream against Andy, I kind of found that they were tanky enough that I could always get to them in time to defend them, which isn't true for pigs.
Yeah. So the other thing is campfires don't have their own defense. They don't shoot like a pig would, so you have to defend them. Or, it's a small investment. You could just let it die and let it be a distraction.
This is really the most exciting part of the patch for me, because it's going to make multiplayer games so much more interesting. Like, it'll force engagements early if players want to grab a campfire for that little extra boost of income. Because originally, if you wanted more farms, you'd have to get a whole nother mill and then another farm. That's 120 food, but now that's 60 food just for extra food straight out. So it's quite nice.
One of the things we had discussed earlier was how campfires would affect the fairness of map gen, and how having an extra point of, or an extra variable might increase the level of RNG or decrease it. I guess RNG is the wrong word, but if you want to elaborate on what you were saying.
Yeah, so
Previously.
basically, this was a terrible map for me. My opponent had more mills on his side of the map. But now there's another dimension to that. Now there are campfires, so maybe your opponent has more mills, but you have a nice campfire near you or something like that. So I think it'll help even out maps that previously might have felt unfair.
Seems like this helps out players like Chip, who likes to go super aggressive on one base. This will give almost an easy option. Keep up your aggression. You have a free, 300 food for the next.
So it'll also be good for players who like playing contains and structure cheese, because now they can get some nice forward territory to build their structures in.
You don't get as much territory though with it. It's much smaller.
No,
correct?
it's a small amount of territory, but
Yeah.
it can be in a forward location, and
If it's close enough to your mill, it can allow for Master to make his plays while still getting the added benefit of like, well, if you're gonna play like Master, why would you get a pig at home when you could get a pig next to the opponent's pigs?
exactly.
Are you not able to sell the campfire if it's keeping you from starving? Similar to not selling your main.
But
farm.
like a mill or a pig, you can sell it while it's building, but you can't sell it once it's built. I actually don't know about the if you're in starving and you start building the campfire, if you can sell it. That's an interesting point. So we'll have to test that, because otherwise you could stave off starvation indefinitely by selling and rebuying the campfire. We'll have to test that. It's a good point.
See if they took that into account.
All right, so
On to the next.
so yeah, so the next big thing is map customization. So there are now I think 12 different environment types. So based off of some of the map gen from the campaign mode, slightly tweaked to be balanced for multiplayer. So we'll have the snow tile sets, the desert tile sets, like the different colored trees that are in the monastic gardens. And then in unranked mode, you can select which one you want to play, or play random, or the old map gen is still there too. And in ranked, it'll just be random between all of them. And then you can also set the size of the map. You can do standard, large, or extra large. I know some people really like that, really like the large maps. So that'll be fun. And you can set the amount of grist mills on the map to scarce, standard, or plentiful. If you don't like the campfires, you can turn them off, or you have the standard amount, or you can have a large amount of campfires. So a lot of options to play with to really play how you like when you're playing in unranked or offline. In ranked, all the settings will be standard.
Yeah.
Even for the environment, it'll be just set to VSHL, I'm assuming?
In ranked, it'll be random between all the new environments.
Gotcha. Is that... how do I say this? So each environment has its own way of actually generating the tiles. So,
Yeah,
is it also taking that into ranked, or is it just the actual...
A lot of the maps have the same geology, so like there'll still be mills and campfires and high ground in the same places for the most part. A few of them have different geology and terrain generation, but the differences are like in the placement of water and the impassable cliffs and bridges and trees and the rundown shacks and that sort of thing.
So you won't be able to instantly load into a map and then like see, oh, this is the winter map, therefore there's going to be a lot of elevation. I don't need to scout as much. I can just straight go into falcons or something.
Yeah. So
one thing I'm a bit disappointed is that you can't randomize the size, which is odd. Within the standard set, is there different sizes in that, or is standard always the same size?
I believe it's a range of sizes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So large isn't just like a set large; it's a range of large.
I haven't looked at the map gen files for since the patch, so if it's a set or a range, but I remember from before the patch it was a range of sizes, so I have to check to double check on that, but I believe it's still a range of sizes for the different options.
Gotcha. I'm actually scrolling through extra large right now, and there seems to be a lot of like generation allows you to walk outside, unless that's just something I'm missing. Oh yeah, it's a bit buggy looking, but very cool. Yeah, I know there'll be a lot of players that'll enjoy playing on these extra large maps, so they never get those close spawns.
Well, I'm looking forward to extra large with scarce resources. That seems like the ideal playset for the competitive-minded player.
Let's see. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff is new, and
I think if
because
you're
it's
complaining,
random, there'll probably be some things that, you know, don't come up in the limited amount of testing that developers can do themselves. So play on all these different environments with all these different settings, and if you see something that seems off or broken or whatever, just post it in the troubleshooting channel in the Discord, and the developers will take a look at it.
Cool. One thing I noticed with the campfire spawns is that with standard you'll get maybe 1 or 2, sometimes 3, but in plentiful you get a whole bunch. I guess that'll be some testing in multiplayer to see what's the good amount of campfires. Do you think 1 or 2 in a game is good enough to make an impact in how games are even played?
I mean, just by being there, it makes some difference.
Of course.
Whether or not with only 1 or 2, if they tend to be in relevant positions, who knows?
It's also much easier to hide a campfire than it is to hide a pig, because pigs give off audio cues and will shoot you if you walk nearby. But if you walk near a campfire that's hidden in the bushes, you won't necessarily get any indication of that.
That's an interesting point. Huh? Does the campfires not make any noise even if you're next to it?
I think there's like a ember cackling sound effect.
But I think you're close.
Yeah, very slight.
But I mean, it's just a 1 tile, or is it 4 tiles? I think it's 4 tiles. But a mill with pigs around it will cover a much larger area, and plus the pigs have the range. So if you're walking by and get shot, that's another indication.
Indeed. All right, cool.
It's certainly most valuable, or I think it'll have a big, like you had said earlier, for players like Chip who like to go one base, it's certainly allows you to continue to do that without losing steam as quickly as you suddenly would when it hits the 5-minute mark.
Yeah, it's much less food commitment. 60 food instead of the 120 if you wanted to keep up aggression.
Yeah, I think just in terms of my playstyle, which is a little bit on the more economic 3-base style, ideally, I would probably look for available campfires first before I get a second expand and use the campfire to help transition into that. But I'm not sure what the optimal play is yet.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a nearby, if you have the choice of 2.
Hopefully this build will stay up for the next week so we can get a whole bunch of data in for the week 2 of the tournament. All right. On to the next point.
Yeah, so now everything that you guys have been waiting for, the balance changes. It's a whole lot here. So a lot of the incentive for many of these changes was motivated by Andy, the lead developer, watching a few of the recent tournaments and seeing how focused they were on tier 1 unit play, where people were taking 3, 4, even all 5 tier 1 units sometimes, and the game was often not even teching up out of them to tier 1 or tier 3. So he definitely wants more variety in unit choices, so that's what motivated a lot of these changes. So let's go through in the order they're in the patch notes. So the first one is the Boar, and the motivation for this change was more about Andy wanted to give the Boar a bit more texture, make it a little less one note, because before it was just a beefy AoE. It was not as much interesting about it. It was more simple compared to the other tier 3s. And the other slight reason he wanted to do it was so he could use that Boar artwork that's at the top of the patch notes. So he wanted to but that was just a side benefit mostly. So the big change for the Boar is he now moves 1/3 slower, 67% speed. But when he dies, he explodes in a massive 9x9 AoE that deals 10 damage to units, and all his damage, both the death explosion and just his normal flamethrower, deals double damage to turrets and other structures. Whereas before, his fire did 4 times damage to mills and warrens because it did damage per tile, and so they occupy 4 tiles, so it did 4 times damage. Now, it doesn't do that. It only do like 1 instance of damage per unit or structure, but it does double damage to all structures, so it'll be a little less pathetic against like a machine gun nest. So yeah, he's with the slow movement and the big AoE on death, he's sort of like a ticking time bomb. So you walk him towards your opponent's base, deal as much damage as you can, and then when he finally dies, he does a bunch more damage.
Do you know if the 2 times damage will show a crit symbol?
Probably.
Probably.
I haven't looked at it myself.
That's a lot of crits.
Yeah, it should be fun. But
This was one of the more surprising changes to me, because I had originally thought that Andy did not like the whole owl bomb thing because it made the owl really good when dying, which felt really weird. But now he's done the same with the boar, so I guess he's sort of warmed up to the idea of giving a bit of texture to these tier 3s in death.
Well,
he specifically didn't like it on the owl because the idea of the owl is to get a bunch of value over time, so that conflicted with suiciding the owl.
Of course, I'm probably the biggest fan of the owl bomb, and this is exactly why I love it, because it inherently has that decision, whereas the board, it doesn't feel like it's, I'm going to decide to get it blown up. It feels more like I'm just going to run it close to the structure, close to the valuable targets, and then it'll do its thing, and if it dies, it's still doing its thing, and that seems like less of a decision to me. Also, like, just in testing it, it's hard to position the boar in such a way that it makes use of that, because the boar can't attack move.
Yeah.
But
the inclusion of the slower movement is pretty smart, because originally I was thinking about this, and I was just thinking, so I'm just going to make my boar run into them, and then they're going to be forced to run away, but retreating is never that great, so now I'm killing them as they run. So it kind of puts the other player in a really odd position where, okay, do I just try to kill this boar? Like, it's like going to open up a lot of interesting strategies. I feel like I'm not going to know what to do in that situation.
Well, it's just about all of the units that can kill the boar are going to be within range of the explosion. Like, the exceptions are, I guess, snake, skunk, ferret, falcon, fox, and balloon. Maybe artillery, I don't know.
About the falcon, change that I think was added a little bit last minute was the explosion also hits flying.
Okay, so
it'll one-shot pigeons, it'll one-shot balloons, it'll take falcons down to 5 HP.
That's good.
It's our first anti-air AoE. Yay!
That's actually good, because my next comment was going to be about how the boar is now even more polarizing, because you build falcons to counter it, and now it'd be Now, I was going to say you have to build falcons to counter it, but if it explodes on death and basically kills the falcons, that suddenly removes that point entirely. So, as weird as it's...
It's like throughout the fight, you want to keep the boar alive until the very end. Like, you don't want to focus fire him.
You want to be sure you've killed everything else, and then you kill the boar. But I think this definitely will favor the strategy of building a lot of tier 1 and the boar, because there's who do you focus? Well, you focus the boar because you don't focus.
Yeah, so because he also got an HP nerf, so now he only has 80 HP, which is still a lot, but he's not quite as tanky because of this decision about focus firing the boar.
Well, I guess the other reason why I was saying tier 1 and Boar is so like when the fight's over and both sides have lost all their army, you suddenly you can just sell this Boar and get your army back much faster than the opponent can.
So clarify something for me. It says explodes in a 9x9 tile. Is that including the Boar? The Boar tiles?
I mean, the boar is one tile.
He's one
even
by
though
one?
he looks, yeah. All units occupy one tile, even
Okay.
though the tier 3s look large.
Oh, okay. I always thought they created more. Okay.
Nope.
So it's a range of about 4.
Wait, what do you mean it's a range of about 4?
So
Well, if it's 9x9 and he's in the center.
yeah, 4 in all directions.
Oh, I get you. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
But diagonals are weird, so.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right, let's move on. Barbed
On.
wire. So, barbed wire was changed to be more interactive because previously the only units that could attack it after it had been built were lizards, chameleons, moles, and the mice from owls. And then occasionally, like a ferret couldn't target it, but could damage it if it targeted a unit that was inside of it. And I think Boar and Toad were the same way. But now, it's still those units that can attack it, but any unit that moves through it, the damage that the barbed wire deals to that unit, it will also take itself. So you can now clear barbed wire by just running your units through it, which still isn't a great idea because it'll shred through your units and slow them down a lot, especially if they have army protecting it and shooting at your units while they're moving slowly through it. But it is another way to destroy the barbed wire. And so it got a bit of a health buff, just to sort of even that out so it's not too weak from through it. So a good way to clear up maybe tanky units and pigeons to heal through it. So be a fun thing to experiment, maybe see barbed wire played a bit more and how that change, if it works out as intended.
So remind
You guys
me,
have any thoughts?
how much damage does barbed wire do? To
Barbed
unit?
wire does 2 damage per second.
2 damage per second. So in 15 seconds, a piece of barbed wire dies if one unit is sitting in it. Yes?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So if 2 units are sitting in it, it dies in 7 point some seconds. Yes?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. Huh. So this is
20
essentially a nerf in a way? Because now they
Yeah,
died them way more thing. Well, everything.
I'd say
It is a bit of a nerf, but on the flip side, a lot of things that were successful against barbed wire also received nerfs this patch, which we'll get to.
yeah. And I think I wouldn't understate the amount or the HP increase. I think that makes it much more useful than
Yeah, that's
like
an
in
extra
addition-
3 seconds.
yeah. And 15 seconds for 20 food is like that's. I'm not sure how that compares to other units, but I think that's the best. Like 20 for 30 HP is probably the best value you can get.
All right. Yeah.
Do you think
It
this
is
would make barbed wire viable? I don't know how this changes.
I think it definitely does.
Yeah.
But like that's not looking at barbed wire in a vacuum. That's like looking at everything as a whole. I think
Yeah.
barbed wire is now viable.
Yeah. I mean, barbed wire has always been a bit of a coin flip in that, like, unit maps that have like good chokes to use it in, like was always like super strong on, but like more open maps, it was still useful, but it was harder to find the use for it. Like, it's an obvious decision to put it in a choke, but in an open field, where do you put it to make it relevant? Because it's more easy to run around, so you have to figure out where the battle is going to happen. But yeah, so with it being more interactive, it gives us more levers to tune it if it's too weak or too strong. So it may not be in the perfectly balanced state, but it allows us to balance it better in the future. So moving on, the mole. So a lot of these changes came in a hot fix about last week. And the motivation for this was largely because of mole rushes at high level play were really distorting the meta and unit pick rates, because a mole rush on 4 farms was just too consistent, and it could always get value before you could respond to it. So in response to that, they lost their structure crit because they could crit down anything like a Warren or a machine gun turret that you were trying to build in response. And so when the rush thing counters the thing that you can do to answer the rush, it leaves you with not really any options. So that's why that was removed. It was still being too consistent against sniping off pigs and getting value after that. So damage was reduced by 1, so now only does 2 damage, and they lost the ability to sell them, because that's also one of the big reasons you could always get good value, because you could snipe the pig and then sell it for like half value, and you were still coming out ahead on that. And then to compensate a little bit to make them more useful as like mid-game tanks or something like that, they got plus 5 HP, so now they have 30 HP. So they might be slightly underpowered now, but the devs are focusing on finding a way to buff them back up again in a more appropriate way.
Yeah, it seems, if anything, this patch was created for moles just to stop people from using them so early in any game so early. Because even at the end here, it says expect them to get a buff next patch. So I guess they are aware that maybe this patch came too late, and people have already figured out moles, right? This is completely anecdotal, but I don't think the moles are as much of a problem as they were those first few days when people really started using them. And then now I think this nerf may be unnecessary, at least in my experience.
I think it might also just be like playing against a mole rush is not fun in like terms of, for a lot of players, it comes down to, did I get back and did I scout it in time? Did I flip the coin and see him doing it? And did I happen to have the or did I place the structure in time to deal with it or not? And like that, and rather than try and balance that out right now, like just as a way of like quickly solving the problem, like we're gonna get rid of moles, we're gonna solve everything else, then we'll add them back in.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with that, I guess. But like, have we seen really moles that prevalent since those first few days where people were really complaining about them? Or
the hot fix came pretty quickly after some.
I think after Strawberry's tournament.
Oh,
Yeah.
Really? I didn't realize that there
Yeah.
was a nerf that already happened, which stopped them from being good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So in the hot fix that reverted crossplay and put us back on Steamworks because there were too many instabilities with the GOG Galaxy servers, the mole nerf was included in that hot fix.
I see. So that's why it became a non-factor.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right. Well, in
All
the
right.
future, I hope that they bring back that you're allowed to sell them after them being fully made, because I feel like that's like a thing of Tooth and Tail, being able to tech switch out of something. But now if a mole is built, you're sort of forced into using it, and that just feels wrong to me.
Yeah.
So I hope selling
So
them
I mean,
is brought back.
it's sort of a band-aid fix, and we'll be looking more closely at it after all the rest of these changes shake out. How to rebuff the mole in ways that don't distort the meta with unbeatable mole rushes strats. All right, so let's move on to Lizard.
Oh boy.
So,
This is the big one.
so the Lizard had its range reduced from 2 to 1. It still can hit air unit, so it can still hit pigeons and falcons and balloons and owl. But it has to get a little closer to do so. Way back in alpha, the lizard was originally range 1 and was boosted to range 2 because we needed more anti-air at tier 1 because back then Squirrel was the only anti-air at tier 1. So
and we had the belief that at one range shouldn't be able to hit flying.
Yeah, so that was the original reason for the change back in alpha. Andy never liked it because he didn't like he likes consistency. He didn't like how it made lizards able to, when the change was first made, lizards lost the ability to hit barbed wire, but then that was re-added because then there were too few units able to hit barbed wire. And at the time, chameleons weren't popular, moles weren't popular, and so that left mice from owls, and that was tier 3, and you couldn't rely on that to carry the weight of countering tier 3. So barbed wire just became super OP because nobody took any of the units that dealt with it. So them attacking barbed wire was re-added, but then they could attack barbed wire from outside if it's range. So that was always a little messy. So, and he's trying to clean up. He thought that the increasing to range caused a lot of other problems, so he's going back to range 1. This is a pretty big nerf for lizards because it reduces the some of the micro you can do with them, like cutting back and that Chip likes to do.
Well, yeah, I've seen some. I was watching Chip's testing stream, and like I guess for instance, there are now not enough spots around a board for lizards to be able to kill it in time. No matter how, like you have, I think he went up to like 20 lizards and it wasn't enough.
You mean in a 20 versus 1 scenario?
One boar.
Wow.
21 lizards versus one boar, I think. And it wasn't they couldn't kill the boar.
Wow.
But
I guess that also makes mill sniping harder as well, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have very strong stats. They're getting +1 HP as a little bit of compensation, so they'll have 3 attack and 10 health. So they have early game. They have like the best stats that you can get. They'll still be good for running around sniping things.
So they'll survive
still hit
one
air
hit
units.
from
I guess I originally had thought that squirrels could just beat lizards, and because of Chip again tested this and turned out I was incorrect. But I realized why I was thinking this is because when Andy was, originally I just thought they could outrange it, but when I was playing against Andy on his stream or on Pocket Watch stream, he was going lizards because they were one range. He couldn't commit it, or he would have to commit more in to be able to fight me, and he wasn't willing to do that. So it makes them their poking much harder because it's more of a commitment now when they're at one range than when they're at 2.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest effect of it, is that when lizards attack, they have to commit. You can't dance in and out as much. You go and you strike, and then maybe you run away. But there's not much back and forth. It's in till you're done, or in and out, and that's it.
And toad pickoffs have become pretty much impossible now with the toad increase in HP, and now with the lower range, you pretty much can't pick off toads with lizards anymore. Right? Which feels
you can kite back though, because the toads were changed to only explode in their tile, so instead of on the unit that they target. So I'm not sure how possible it is.
It's certainly much harder.
The timing is pretty tight, but you might be able to trigger the toad and then kite back out.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then the other is the pathfinding for melee units was cleaned up, so they will have a better time finding the path to their targets, but there's still limited space around the target because of their one range to attack.
So maybe you could clarify why this was done, because when this was first being proposed, it was odd because I feel like in the current meta, Squirrel Toad is the current thing to run, and lizards are, I think, rarely run by most players. But now lizards have been nerfed, so now lizards are going to be even used less, and toads have been buffed, which is a natural counter to lizards. So I'm sort of confused by that.
This change is less a reaction to the current meta and more moving the game in the direction that Andy wants it to be in. So he feels that the two late-range lizards were ultimately a mistake. While yes, they were a band-aid fix to some problems we had, he does not feel that it is the appropriate state for the lizards. So if this nerf hits them too much, they'll probably see buffs in some other manner in the next patch. But this is the direction he wants to take lizards, and yeah.
And I guess what direction is that, if you could? Like more of a pokey unit, or?
Yeah, so it's the runaround, flank, skirmish. Yeah, I think the number consistency was a big deal for him. So that the two range being unique to only lizards never sat well with him, and them outranging barbed wire, he never liked.
Okay. Huh. So I guess with this current nerf, lizards are going to be more used in a hit and run kind of tactic rather than upfront battles. Is what I'm sort of getting from this.
Yeah, they'll still be strong early game cheese rushes, like before your opponent builds toads. You know they're still the strongest stat wise early game unit.
They could have the role of the counter toads, where you just build one Warrenworth and you have them in the back until like you see the massive toads coming for your squirrels, and then you send the lizards out to feed. To try like that.
With 10 health, they'll still be efficient HP tanks against anything other than AoE, because AoE is better against large amounts of units, and they still do a lot of damage as well. So play around with them. You might have to change up your tactics with them a little bit to find success, but see what you can do. So we'll move on to pigeons. Pigeons have been a staple pick in the meta recently, and contributing to filling up deck choices with just tier 1s. So the changes here is -1 range and -1 HP, and the reason for this is it makes pigeons more vulnerable because they have to get in closer to their target, and they're a bit easier to kill. It's 2 shots from a squirrel instead of 3 is the big thing. And then also what the -1 range does is it lowers the effective healing cap. So the maximum possible heals is 9. Like there's no way to get more than 9 stacks. But even then, like you'd have to have 3 pigeons in front of the unit they're healing to even get that. So most of the time I expect maybe like 6 to be like the max, maybe even less. And their heals should be spread out among your units a bit more, is what I would expect. So what are your guys' thoughts on this pigeon change?
I didn't really have that many thoughts on it. I think, yeah, this makes sense. The -1 HP, that really only matters in squirrel matchups, I believe.
Yep.
I mean, now it takes 2 hits instead of 3, so in those early engagements in squirrel versus pigeon, getting your pigeons on the front lines when you're trying to heal things is going to be much worse for you.
Yeah, I guess the other place it'll matter is with a snake. One one stack of poison will take 2 ticks instead of 3. So that's another situation where it makes a small difference.
Hmm.
And if they accidentally get into range of a machine gun nest turret.
I think changing the range is nice just because they were so dominant.
Even still, 9 stacks is very significant. Especially when counteracting that poison stacks. You rarely ever see poison over 9. But still, this is a pretty good change. But it's so small though. It'll probably be like small micro situations, as Shoof mentioned, where we'll actually see anything like this make a difference.
Yeah, which I think it's fair. It's because they're the only healing unit. It's kind of hard to say, oh, they're OP. It's just like, well, we needed a healing unit, and I only had one option, so I had to take it.
Yeah.
Like just from pick rate, it's not going to be the clearest thing.
Yeah, and I think some people overvalue healing somewhat, saying like, oh, I have to have a healing unit. You can make do without healing. It's very nice for certain strategies, and like for certain strategies you want to do, like, yeah, healing is the must take, but you can run strategies without pigeons just fine, I think. Let's move on to Toad. Toads has some of the largest changes in this patch. The biggest thing is that instead of before, the Toad would choose a target and the explosion would be centered around that target. So that sort of carry the explosion into your army a little bit more, so it would hit more units. Now the Toad explodes on its own tile. So unless you use focus fire to drag your Toads inside the enemy unit ball, the most it's going to be hitting is 3 units instead of 6 or even 9, which is a pretty big change. So they are getting a bit more HP. They'll have 10 HP to allow them to get in a little bit more consistently. And then the other change is, instead of a big single target damage and small AoE, they're getting a medium AoE. So no more single target damage, but the AoE will be 6 instead of 3. So it'll only take 2 Toad hits instead of 3 to kill tier 1 units. They'll be a bit less effective against tankier units like tier 2 and tier 3 or moles. But to balance that, like, they'll be hitting less units on average. And so the reason for this is, the idea is to make Toad fill the design space of trying to force the opponent to tech up into tankier, higher tier units. So we'll see how it works out. The other change is that they will crit structures. So they'll do double damage to structures. So they'll do 12 damage to structures. So that's sort of to compensate for the single target damage being removed, because that was one of the primary reasons for it. So hitting a Toad on a structure won't feel like a waste. You guys have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. I like the structure double damage. That's really cool. Makes them kind of more similar to Banelings from StarCraft. The reduction to 6 to all makes a whole, like, so much sense, because it used to be the Toads were great at almost all facets in the game. You could kill tier 3s with it, you can kill large amounts of tier 2 with it, but now it seems like sort of a anti-squishy unit kind of tier 1, which makes sense. Like but that being said, I feel like Toads will now be almost an insta-pick in the tier 1. Unless you feel differently for some reason.
I mean, I think they're so dominant against lizards right now that the effect. I think you can get by with just squirrel right now, because the threat of Toad exists.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you I think you could have just one tier 1 in your decks now and it'd be squirrel.
Really?
Just like depending on how the meta turns out, but that's kind of like saying you're not going to pick lizard because you're afraid you're never going to get a mass number of lizards to deal with my mass number of squirrels, because then I just get toad and you're dead and you can't know if I have toad or not.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. A couple days ago when I was playing ranked, that's essentially how I was playing. I was like thinking, okay, I know these guys aren't gonna get lizards because I have toads every single game, so I'm just not gonna do toads anymore. I'm just gonna do squirrels, and it ended up working out okay. But then, you know, it goes into that sort of metagame before games even start, where okay, now I don't think he's gonna pick toads, so I'm gonna go lizards. So maybe that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, it's a weird thing of like, I'm not like it's a funny kind of metagame, but it's also like it feels terrible to lose the game just purely off of, oh, he has the deck that counters mine. Like I went for the lizard and he didn't, and I think you can, like, there's enough other options to deal with lizard that the toad's almost unnecessary if you aren't also like thinking about other combos with the toad.
Before, did you say that you thought squirrels did better against lizards in this patch, or what? I don't remember what you said there. You said you were watching Chip.
I had originally just thought that squirrels would straight up beat lizards still.
And they do, or they don't?
They don't.
Okay.
But I think if you add into any other effect, whether it's toad, whether it's warrens, whether it's pigs, squirrels will come out on top. But
I think that we'll... Go ahead.
Just in the one-on-one scenario of like one type of unit versus one type of unit, lizards will win regardless of numbers.
I feel like what we're gonna see is people going pretty much what you're saying. It's not even bothering with toads and just being much more defensive, staying behind warrens with squirrels, because now the lizards have that one range, so they're just gonna sit. And now lizards, it's going to be much harder for lizards to poke against an extremely defensive player. So I'm a bit scared about that.
Yeah. I think toad also, if you can find a way to get it up into enemy squirrels, does very well. So it's not a straight rock paper scissors. The trick is finding a way to get. Toad has an HP buff, so it requires less micro to do, but it still is a difficult thing. But it certainly is possible to just decimate squirrels with toad.
Yeah, it seems like what I'm seeing is that it isn't straight up rock paper scissors anymore. As you said, you have to find those situations where I can sort of, find a situation where I can make some damage here. It's not just straight up, okay, toads win against lizards, lizards win against squirrels. I can more fudge it a bit more now. This is what it seems like. It'll reduce.
I think at least in the squirrel toad dynamic, I think lizards are kind of. It might just be the toad and squirrel are balanced against each other, and then lizard is a niche pick, which is different than rock paper scissors, which it's a different dynamic, and we'll have to honestly, right? This speculative thing, it's kind of I could argue both ways.
People will test it out a bunch. We'll see how it ends up shaking out. I see Xeno in chat suggesting maybe you just only run Toad as your T1 and use that to hold off your opponent's T1 aggression and then tech up into T2 right away. So maybe that'll be a fun strategy.
Like how many squirrels do you need before the toads can just always decimate them? Like, because the squirrel has, is it 10 HP I'm reading? Or no, or is it 13? Or, it's 10, so that's 5 squirrels to stop one in one shot. So will 6 toads beat out 6 squirrels, or do you need to go up to 9 or 12 squirrels? Like that.
Well, we'll see how it shakes out. Let's move on to Snake. So snakes were a bit strong last patch. And the nerf that we've decided is removing the ability to poison structures. It always felt a little weird to poison a building, and it was hard to play around because pigeons can't heal a building, so tagging it was just like a kiss of death a lot of the time. There wasn't anything you could do other than sell it or just take the loss. And a little bit of history lesson, when the ability to poison structures was added, was way back in the alpha, and the reason it was added, I believe, was to provide another answer to sniper balloons, because back then sniper balloons one-shot falcons, so they weren't a good option against it, and then your only other real option was tier 1s, because Snake not poisoning it didn't really work, and can't rely on a tier 3, so you only had
And
tier 1s
skunks, ferrets, and
to deal with balloons. So now balloons are in a bit better spot, that I don't think that's needed to deal with balloons anymore, and Snake having the ability to poison structures was encroaching a little bit too much on the ferret's niche of anti-structure, where like, oh, Snake is just as good as ferret in these situations, and is also good just generally against units, so why would I ever pick ferret when I can just pick Snake?
Yeah, you pretty much hit it exactly there. Pretty much what I was thinking.
I do like this change, but it is a buff to structures, and like structures will be good against Snake. And I guess the elephant in the room is the artillery cannon, where it's like, now how do you counter this? Like there's less and less options now.
Yeah, so I mean, that's definitely something to take a look at, and if you're focusing your testing, think about artillery cannon, like what can I do against it now? Does it need a nerf or a slight rework or something? It's something to keep your eye on.
I'm hoping we're going to see a lot more ferrets and falcons in the coming days.
Speaking of falcon, Falcon is getting a +1 damage buff. Last patch, people were saying they felt underwhelming. So they're getting a +1 damage buff. They're still very squishy, so if you're having trouble with them, like, you focus fire them and take them down. But yeah, so there are some things like the toad changes. Like, toads will be popular. The toads don't hit falcons, so maybe falcons will just become more popular because of meta shifts. But they're also getting this buff. So see, historically, when falcons have been strong back in the alpha, they've been difficult to deal with. They're squishier now than they were then, so we'll see how it shakes out. But it's nice to have a tier 2 unit that you can tech up into that
Can
provides damage from a safe distance and can provide the core of your army, sort of, so to speak.
Yeah, it works as like an upgraded squirrel in a way.
Yeah.
And I've always been a big fan of falcons. I think whenever I play a tournament, I pick one. But they're like I guess the big question is, like, will Falcon Ball just be too dominant now?
Yeah. So maybe they'll need to be nerfed back down to 6 damage, or like a health nerf maybe, or something like that. We'll see how it shakes out. But I think Falcons will be pretty good.
I don't see it in the notes, but this may have been patched already. Can falcons and pigeons work well together now?
Yes, I was just about to bring that up.
Yes.
Andy did fix the bug where falcons and pigeons didn't work well together, because it turned out pigeons had priority on tile selection for some reason, so it would actually kick falcons out of the tile they were flying in, and the falcon would fly forward, not shooting to the front, and get taken out. So that's been fixed. So
Cool. That's been a long time coming.
yeah. So falcons will be you won't be plagued by that bug just sending them in kamikaze, which is very nice. So now you can run Falcon Pigeon without worrying about that. Chameleons, just a slight change. They do not unstealth to attack the enemy commander, so you can actually like try to use them to pull off some sneaky plays. Now you can move them off, set them to the side, and you don't have to worry about like the enemy commander running past and the chameleons unstealthing and like, oh, now I can kill these chameleons for free because they're just sitting here alone. Now you could set them off to the side, and they won't be able to tell that they're there, and then you can move your commander to the other side and pull them through and do like a pincer attack while fighting with the rest of your units, and then they're coming from behind and taking out their warrens or their farms or something like that. So you can set up some sneaky, clever plays like that, which will be fun.
It leaves extra time for there to be more unknowns in your tier 2 as well.
Yeah.
It's when you're scouting that tier 2 and you're not seeing anything, you're either thinking, okay, did it just come out late? Did they block it? Or is it a chameleon? And usually, if you ran into their base and a chameleon hit you, it was like, okay, the mystery is gone. But now there's like a few extra seconds of, thinking. So I like that. This is a very good change.
All right. The owl. So we mentioned this a bit before when we were talking about the boar. Andy didn't like the dissonance between the owl should be a unit that you slowly gain value over time through spitting out free mice, and the suiciding to get instant value right away. So the bomb has been removed. It no longer drops 6 mice when it dies. So to compensate for that, it's got a 10 HP buff, so it's a bit tankier. And now the uptime, the high end of the mice production is a lot higher. So mice will now last 60 seconds before expiring, which was 30 before. So that means you can, if the owl is left undisturbed, you can get up to 12 mice now instead of just up to 6. So if you wait a whole minute, you can get this massive amount of mice with just one owl. And to assist in that actually happening, you can no longer just run up with your commander and have the mice aggro onto it and drag them away into your army to be picked off for free. So this has made owl a bit stronger. So the mouse damage has been reduced from 3 to 2. Which I think is a good change because mice hit like a truck, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seemed a little bit weird that they would do more damage than a lizard. Like just lore-wise, this thing that's been decaying in an owl's stomach is now like stronger than this.
Their strength usually stems from their HP though, so I noticed that wasn't changed. But
yeah.
At least their damage was reduced, so now they won't just absolutely wreck through armies. There are a lot of times where I would see the owl die, and then 6 mice will destroy warrens, farms, sometimes mills. So that's really good.
Yeah.
And the mice no longer aggroing on enemy commanders is nice. It was almost actually a good thing when it happened because they would follow the commander indefinitely and kill them. So that was a good removal.
Yeah. So overall, Owl's now a lot more focused towards its singular identity of being the late game value machine of building free units, and if you can stall and build up a huge mouse ball, you can have like this huge ball of mice to tank for you and make a big push.
Yeah, this is making the Xenos of the world very happy.
Yes.
I'm actually not like. I feel like this is actually a stronger like. I still prefer the album because I have to keep my identity. But I feel like this is a. I have to keep my identity. It's important to me, but it's actually I think now it makes it even more bursty. Like then it just you have to wait the 60 seconds after it spawned till you get the massive amount of mice and then you go, as opposed to before where you try to kill off the owl and then it would go mid fight. Where it's like once you build the owl, you kind of don't want to use it until it's got some mice backing it, because if you just send in one mouse at a time, it will get picked off quite easily. So you'll wait till you have a large amount and then go.
Yeah. So
and then you might try to back up and then wait another 60 seconds and do it again.
It's definitely been slowed down, but the payoff if you do slow it down is higher. So we'll move on to Fox, everybody's favorite tier 3. We tried nerfing its damage and the vision last patch through the theory that it just got too much value against the tanky units as it was picking off the tier 1 units constantly. So we've kept the vision nerf because we liked how that added a little bit of risk and reward to how you micro the fox around. But the damage nerf has been reverted, sort of focus back on the fox's original intention, which was to be like, sniping that high value target off from the distance. So this is a change that a lot of people like, because they've been frustrated by fox is long range and swift, I just can't catch the fox. So now the fox will have to take a little bit more risk when it takes off those pot shots. It'll be frozen in place for a quarter second before it even gets to take a shot, and then it'll stay in place after taking a shot for a quarter second longer than it did before. So a total of half a second after it takes a shot. So it'll be 3/4 of a second of just standing still every time you're taking a shot off. So you have to, instead of just kiting around the fight and going pop 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 picking off units, you have to choose where you stop to take the shot a lot more carefully, or else the opponent has a chance to run down the fox and kill it. And it also has a lot squishier. It only has 25 HP now. So if you do catch it, you can take it out really quickly.
I agree with this change so much, because you had said that now the fox has gone back to its original design of picking out those high tiered units, and before, with the higher cast time, or I guess faster cast time, she could be in an upfront fight against tier 1 and do as much good as any other unit. But now she can't really be as used as effective in just picking out tier 1s. Now you're going to want to use her to pick up those higher tier units. And I think that's much a better place for her right now. This was a good change. And bringing back her +6, it feels so good to one-shot pigs. It just felt awkward trying to two-shot them. So that's a very good revert. The
advantage of this change, as opposed to what we tried last patch, is that the benefits were made more of a difference at the higher level, where the more damage against the tankier units had more of an impact that you could notice, whereas in the lower levels of play, it was just I can't catch this fox, I don't know what to do. It just drains all of my units without me being able to do anything. So now the counterplay to fox is a lot more accessible to lower level players, I feel.
And when you nerf its damage, you're almost reinforcing that it should be used to target squirrels, and which is kind of counter to what the whole, I guess, theme of the unit when it was originally created was. But
yeah, so when we were going towards that nerf, it was distancing a little bit away from what the original intent of the fox was, but more towards sort of a discovered playstyle that was sort of hey, this is fun to be kiting around and picking off units and being this big economy drain. So that was fun, but it was frustrating for the other players. So now fox just has to take a lot more, can still do the same thing, but has to take more risks to do so.
Do you believe that there was any credence to the suggestions that fox speed should be slightly reduced?
I don't think, some people were saying remove it completely. That just doesn't work.
Yeah.
That just makes fox a bad ferret.
Or a bad chameleon.
But if slightly reducing this the amount of Swift. The big concern I'd have with that is then Wolf buffed units would outrun Fox. Like any unit buffed by Wolf, not just Lizards, would outrun Fox. Which would be a consequence that you'd have to consider very seriously before making any change, like reducing the speed of Swift.
Well, even not counting Wolf, if just like you wouldn't be able to fire and run at the same time. Like there'd be no real, like the kiting with the Fox. If they were the same speed, it ends up being not a, like you suddenly can't micro the Fox. It becomes like you can do that. Like you can. It's in the same way you micro squirrels. It's not. You're going to lose squirrels while you do that, and you're going to lose the Fox of it. Like, well, that happens, and it kind of completely removes the playstyle of the Fox. And maybe there's a new playstyle there, but it certainly isn't possible to continue doing what you're doing.
And then the other thing, if you were to nerf the speed of Swift, it would also be nerfing Lizard speed, because and it definitely doesn't want to have two different Swifts for the Fox and the Lizard. So that'd just be breaking consistency and make learning the game that much harder. So
you could have in theory 4 different speeds with the Boar.
If you nerf Fox, you're also nerfing Lizard speed. So
to be fair, people have also called for doing that. So
yeah, I think this the change of the longer pause per shot sort of has the same effect as reducing Swift, and I think is actually a bit easier to play against, or to learn to play against. It's having the Fox freeze in place instead of just moving slightly slower and being able to catch up to it over time, I think is easier to learn how to play against, which I think is a big boon, because Fox has always been frustrating for new players. All right, let's move on to Badger. Badger got a nerf last patch that it took longer to wind up and cooled down to the low attack speed quicker, but apparently there was a bug and it was not winding down quick at all. It was winding down at the same speed as it wound up. So it's supposed to be a slow wind up and a quick wind down, but it was slow up and slow down. So that's been fixed, and so that's a nerf to Badger. So Badger's been strong, so hopefully this brings Badger back into line with only needing 1 second to wind down instead of 6. So if you are able to disengage from the Badger, its DPS will drop down significantly, making it a bit easier to play against. Do you have any thoughts?
Seems pretty straightforward to me.
All right, let's move on then. Machine gun turret, just a small HP nerf. The motivation for this is a lot of the stuff that was good against machine gun turrets got nerfed. Bulls lost their structure crit, snakes lost their structure tagging, falcon or lizards lost a range. So just a small nerf to preventively keep them from being too dominant.
I felt machine gun turrets were already pretty dominant against stopping the early tier 1. So I think this reduction in HP should help it along a little bit. Maybe not make it as dominant. I think the squirrel pigeon should work even better against machine gun turret now in breaking.
Landmine is getting a damage buff. So instead of 9 to a single target and 3 in AoE, it's now 12 to a single target and 4 in AoE. So the reason for the buff is they just weren't seeing a whole lot of play. So now, since the last patch, their AoE was reduced from 5x5 to 3x3. So they have a smaller AoE. So yeah, the damage buff is just to see if they get more play. Now it only takes 2 landmine hits to kill squirrels. Because it's single target damage, 2 landmines will, and the fox health nerf, 2 landmines will almost kill a fox. So, you guys
Was
have
the
any thoughts?
AoE portion of it changed from 1 to 4, or has it always been 4?
No, it was 3. So, the AoE is 1/4 of the single target damage, or 1/3 of the single target damage.
I see.
Yeah. So before it was 9 and 3, now it's 12 and 4. So plus 3 to the single target and divide that by 3, so that's plus 1 to the AoE. That's the way that works. And then last change is Warrens now have progressively more health for the tier. So tier 1s have 50, tier 2 have 75, and tier 3 have 100. So the idea here is, you're taking a risk of investing a lot of food and waiting longer for the units to come out, of buying the higher tier units. So the extra health should help mitigate that risk. And I guess it's also reverting the last patch. All Warrens were buffed from 50 to 60, so it's nerfing tier 1 Warrens, so that should nerf defensive play on tier 1 a little bit. Just last patch, it seemed like it had been fairly strong. Thoughts?
I think a Warren tanking has become much more of a thing, because that extra 25 HP on a tier 2, I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a risk to place that in your front line, but if you can get it down and the other guy hopefully doesn't have ferrets, I think that's a pretty sick play. And especially 100 HP on a tier 3, that's almost a
that's
mil.
Insane.
Yeah,
that's insane.
That's a huge amount of HP to have to like plop down. Don't even use the tier 3, just use the HP or something.
Yeah. Well,
this is gonna open up a lot of interesting plays. Go ahead.
Well, it's also like once the tier 3 is out, unless you're planning on like having a massive battle and deliberately losing it, it's like for I think a few of them, like I think Wolf and Badger, where like where it's kind of like I have this, I'm gonna win the game with it, and if it doesn't work out and it gets killed, I lose regardless whether I can build it up in time or not, or like I won't have the time to. I think for a few of tier 3s, it's definitely like once I get it out, I don't ever plan on having to rebuild it.
Yeah. It definitely makes it harder to stop a tier 3 rush by killing the Warren. Yeah, so when you're on the offensive, it feels like it'll be a lot less of a good decision to target the tier 2 and tier 3 Warrens unless the enemy's army is out of position and not fighting back, or you are using ferrets and poking it from a safe distance. So maybe this Warren HP buff will increase ferret play.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm wondering, I don't know if this was completely direct, but this will sort of also reduce the amount of tier 1 play sooner, because now you can't pick off those Warrens as easily as you said. Now you're going to have to move on to those extra damage dealing units with the ferrets, with the falcons. So at first I was sort of against this because I didn't really like the idea of Warren tanking, but now that I think about it a lot more, it seems like it's going to add a lot more nuance to gameplay.
Yep, and it adds some decision making of, instead of always hiding your tier 3 in the back of your base to protect it and hide it from scouting, maybe sometimes you put it near the front for the 100 HP tanking.
And like, even if you don't want to bother with that, it just makes defensive play much stronger. Like if you don't change anything at all and just play the same way, your Warrens will be tankier, so you have more time to react.
Alright. And then we'll just quickly go through the other stuff, minor bug fixes and such. So the version number is now visible on the main menu. makes it easier to see if you had an error updating or something like that. Make sure you're on the same patch as the person you're playing against. The players no longer spawn so close together. The close spawns were happening reasonably frequently over the last patch ends. I don't quite like that they're taken out completely. I would have liked them to see like just less frequent, maybe. But it really does force you into like just an aggro game when you're spawned really close. And some people complained about it, so I guess that's why the fix was done.
Do you think this also affects 2v2?
I don't think 2v2 map gen has changed. I'm not.
I think like, it's on the radar, but it's something that have to get, or 1v1 has to be good first before 2v2 is considered.
Yeah.
Sorry to all those 2v2 fans.
I think the new map options are working in 2v2 now. So I mean, maybe try out like the extra large or the different map terrain, and see if you can find one that is consistently good and pass that on, and maybe we can look at the map gen for those those different environments and see what makes them work and apply that to the other ones.
Does the map gen affect 2v2, or because I understand map gen?
It's different map gen algorithms for 2v2.
Yeah. Well, I'm just because I remember 2v2 having different map algorithms and already having more mills and being a larger map.
Yeah.
So would that still be standard? Then you'd have 2 more for that, like extra large.
Yeah, I believe
2v2 would be so extra large. 2v2 is the largest map you can possibly get.
Yep. So there were passworded lobbies have been fixed. There was an issue with them in the last patch, so now you can have private matches without worrying about somebody else jumping in before your friend can. So that's
something to note for streamers, which Poison Gloom has pointed out to us, which is if you are streaming the game and have a private lobby and go into options, it will show up the password. So just be a little bit aware of that. But it shouldn't be too. Other than that, it shouldn't be much of a problem.
Yep. There were some crashes that were fixed. There's a crash that was caused by the little saw blade butchering animation in the mill. So that's that, and there was a crash that it caused. So that crash has been fixed. There was also a crash that was discovered during the tournament stream over the weekend. That if there was a spectator that left while the match was in progress, it could cause a crash for the players. So that's obviously not good, and that's been fixed. And
watch the replay and find out who's to blame. Don't do that. He didn't know. It's not his fault.
And then crossplay, still not yet. Working hard on it. And if you're on PS4, these changes aren't out yet. Will be coming soon. Don't know exactly when, but getting patches through Sony's certification or whatever takes a little extra time, so hang tight. So yeah, that's the patch notes. You guys want to have any casted games showing off these changes?
Maybe, if there are players interested, perhaps.
Yeah. Or the stream has gone on for a while too, or we could just call it too.
How long do we have to go on for the Twitch affiliate? Are we not supposed to? Are we not supposed to reveal this?
Well, you've ruined the illusion. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So, well, since the cat's out of the bag, we are trying to stream a little more frequently instead of just the big tournament days. So you might see us, cast a few replays or show matches occasionally throughout the week instead of just on the big tournament days. So we don't have a set schedule for that yet, but it may just be just pop up whenever, and we'll we'll set an announcement in the Discord and on Twitter and when we stream. And we're doing that so we can get the Twitch affiliate status, because you have to stream more frequently and have certain viewer counts or something like that to get it.
Yeah. I think we have been going for a good amount to show off the patch. And
All right.
I think we can do show matches or something maybe later on in the week, or just save all that until Saturday for when the
All right.
tournament happens. I will go ahead and plug Tooth and Tail TV, though. That will probably be doing some streaming of games tomorrow, so be sure to tune into them.
They stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yep.
So yeah, Tooth and Tail TV.
And remember, guys,
Check
as
'em
I
out.
mentioned, on Saturday we're going to have week 2 of the Oktoberfest qualifiers. We just finished up week 1 a couple days ago, so be sure to tune in for that, 12 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. I had Shooflypi and Valently along with me. I'm AV Ultima. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time.